Do you ever ask yourself, can I get in any trouble paying myself a dividend from my Canadian sub? If so, the good news is generally you're okay, but there are some things you gotta watch out for. Hey, how are you? I'm Duncan McPherson and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some traps and pitfalls that you may unwittingly stumble into when you pay yourself a dividend from your Canadian subsidiary. And as always, for more tips on how you can navigate the Canadian tax system as a US business, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell, or skip the hassle and contact me directly at themactax.com for more tailored advice. So before we get started, please note that the following analysis applies when you own shares in a Canadian C-Corp. If you own shares in a Canadian ULC, the analysis is different. But for now, don't worry about this because I'll tell you more about that at the end of the video. Now, let's get back to basics. So up here, Canada imposes a 25% tax on your dividends. But under the Canadian-US tax treaty, your withholding tax on dividends is typically reduced to 5% if your US corporation owns at least 10% of your Canadian subsidiary, and 15% in all other cases. So if you as an individual even own 100% of your Canadian subsidiary, the withholding tax on your dividends will be 15%. Only your US corporation gets the 5% rate. I guess it's worth mentioning here that if your US LLC or partnership owns the shares in your Canadian subsidiary, you are still entitled to the treaty benefits. But keep in mind, CRA expects you to keep proper books and records on this. In other words, number one, director's resolutions, or number two, other records that memorialize the dividend. Don't just write a check and expect CRA to be okay with you calling it a dividend. In the USA, dividends you remit to foreign persons are reported on Form 1042. In Canada, you report them to CRA on Form NR4. And make sure you do not file the Form NR4 late, because like your 1042, you could be subject to interest and penalties. And when you do pay a dividend, you must also complete Form NR301. But this form is just kept by your Canadian subsidiary. It is not submitted. FYI, it is a form that attests to the fact that you are entitled to treaty benefits. Sort of like your IRS W-8BEN. And just like in the US, your treaty benefits are not automatic up here in Canada. So if you do not do the proper paperwork, you may be subject to a 25% withholding tax or even interest and penalties. And in the extreme case, CRA could recharacterize the dividends as something else. So be careful. Okay, so now that's it for the basics. Now for something that you gotta watch out for and avoid that will happen if your dividend is so large that it causes you to violate the thin cap rules. I have already recorded a previous video on thin capitalizations, so I will not reinvent the wheel here. I will say that our Canadian thin cap limit is the exact same as your US limit, $1.5 of debt for every $1 of equity that your company has. Ergo, if you pay a dividend that would reduce your equity to the point that the thin cap limit is violated, CRA may recharacterize your future interest payments as dividends. This is highly punitive, as withholding tax on your interest payments are 0%, and on your dividends it's 5 or 15%. So you must always be mindful not to overpay dividends and violate the thin capitalization rules, because CRA aggressively audits your thin capitalization compliance. I explained this more thoroughly for you in a previous video, so please go back and have a listen if this particular topic concerns you. But time for us to move onward and upward to dividends and transfer pricing. I have mentioned in a few previous videos how CRA has the computing power to easily investigate your transfer pricing issues. Now, while your dividends are not typically subject to transfer pricing rules, if CRA believes that your profits have been artificially maligned to avoid paying Canadian taxes, CRA may reassess intercompany charges as dividends or recharacterize your dividends as something else. However, CRA does not generally interfere with dividends that are properly sourced from your subsidiary's retained earnings. But listen up though, because although your dividends are not likely to cause you any transfer pricing problems, overpaying a dividend, causing your retained earnings to go negative, can become a nightmare. Because by doing so, you have just entered the world of Section 55, the most litigated section of our code. Section 55 is so complex, I will not even begin to discuss the problem with you. Just know that if you want to pay a dividend and your retained earnings are negative, call me first. Oh, and thank you, because you're about to pay me a lot of money to help you out. Section 55 put my kids through university and hockey, so my best advice to you is just avoid 55. Section 55 is a pain for you, but Canada offers something up with dividends that the United States does not. In Canada, and unlike the United States, you can pay out your paid up capital to shareholders before you pay out your retained earnings, but you still must be wary of violating the thin cap and transfer pricing rules if you choose to do so. This is just an interesting difference between our two great countries. But you know what? That's it for dividends from your Canadian C-Corps. So now let's deal with the issue if your Canadian subsidiary is a ULC and not a C-Corp. Now a little bit of background for you. ULCs are available for you in the provinces of Nova Scotia, British Columbia, and Alberta. As you may treat these entities as transparent for U.S. tax purposes, CRA has special rules for you where dividends are concerned. Mind you, these rules are too complex and obtuse to explain to you right now. So let me just give you the 35,000-foot view. Now, if you or your U.S. C corporation are the shareholders of your Canadian ULC, the analysis in this video of dividends pretty much stands. But to qualify for the benefits mentioned herein, there's additional planning and compliance you must do to receive the benefits mentioned herein. The most notable of which is the reduced withholding under the tax treaty, 5% and 15%. Without this additional compliance, you'll be subjected to a 25% withholding tax rate. And unfortunately, that was the good news. If you have an LLC, not a C Corp, that is the owner of your Canadian ULC, your dividends will be subject to a 25% withholding tax. No treaty benefits. What a hornet's nest, eh? Just best to call me once you've decided to expand up here, which I've been telling you in every video now. But back to dividends. You frustrated yet? Yeah, you probably didn't think it was this complicated. And admittedly, most of the time it's not. Just know that if we work together, you can avoid all the dividend traps and pitfalls, so you can expand up here with peace of mind and focus on your business, not on the nutty nuances in the dividend rules, because you can't know all this tax stuff and run your business too. And on a final note, this week, a situation landed in my office from one of the large firms, actually one of the very large firms. And how shall I say? Their analysis of the pertinent issues was somewhat off the mark. That's the best I can say. So, my friend, never be afraid to ask questions or get a second opinion if you think something doesn't seem right. And you know what? That's all I got for you today. And if any of this resonated with you and you realize you might have to talk to me about your situation, just get my number at themactax.com. And of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe for more tax savings tips. Until next time, stay sharp, stay compliant, and stay out of tax trouble. I'll see you on the next video.